Canadian police officers afraid for their own safety. Mark Carney potentially privatizing Canadian airports. Moms and dads can't find childcare. What do these three things have in common? Well, these are all issues that I've heard from my constituents in the last week. And I want to talk to you about them because I think it highlights what's happening in our country right now. For the last 6, 7, 8 months, Mark Carney and the Liberals have been cosplaying as nationalists, pretending to be these Canadian nationalists defending our national sovereignty and our national interest. But really, they're about as authentic as nationalists as somebody dressing up as Santa Claus at a Christmas parade. They're putting on a show. It's not real. And the federal budget exposes that. And that's what Canadians are starting to realize. And that's what my constituents are telling me. Let's get into it. First off, last weekend I heard from a police officer who was injured on her job, doing what the taxpayer expects, locking up bad guys. The person who injured her had been arrested multiple times for similar crimes. And yet, over and over and over again, she and other officers have had to lock this guy up, risking their safety, engaging with someone who is incredibly dangerous. So much so that he hurt her to the point where she was not able to work and may never be the same again. This is a serious problem because you have a federal government here in Canada and a prime minister in Mark Carney who says he takes criminal justice seriously. He's trying to distance himself from the 10-year tragic record of Justin Trudeau. But the reality is we're still hearing these stories from officers. We're still hearing stories from Canadians who put their safety on the line every day to do their jobs and are paying a price because the system won't lock up the bad guys. When we use phrases like jail, not bail, this is what we're talking about. Yeah, it rhymes. It's a nice slogan. It gets to the meat of the point. But the reality is there are actual Canadian people being harmed every day as a result of liberal bail policies and liberal criminal justice, or as many call it, injustice. And you cannot tell me you are a nationalist, as Mark Carney likes to pretend. You cannot tell me that you stand up for Canada, as Mark Carney likes to pretend, while putting the very people who are on the front lines of law and order at risk every single day. This is what police officers in our country have to go through. Another example of fake nationalism. Mark Carney likes to talk about these big projects that he's investing your money into, nation-building projects. But we see over and over again, he cherry picks projects that have already been started. Projects that hardworking men and women have already started to do. And then he presents them to the Canadian people like he's the difference maker. But in his budget, there's some interesting things. And I had a constituent point this out to me, actually. You see, in the 2025 budget, Mark Carney says the government will also consider options for the privatization of airports. Critical Canadian infrastructure necessary for a nation to be sovereign and strong. Mark Carney sneaks into his budget a line suggesting that he might sell off some or all, who knows, of our airports. Now, what's interesting is that there was a line from Justin Trudeau's last budget before he unceremoniously left Ottawa. And he also mentioned the privatization of airports. But he specifically mentioned attracting capital from pension funds and said this would be specific to airport facilities. So Mark Carney has taken an idea that Justin Trudeau introduced, which had some parameters around it, and snuck it into the 2025 federal government budget with no clarity at all. Again, why does that matter to you? Well, think about this. A private company purchases an airport in one of our great, beautiful cities here in Canada. What stops a venture capital fund from then owning that private company? A venture capital fund that could be located anywhere in the world. foreign ownership potentially controlling a Canadian airport. Now, the Liberals will hear this and say, well, we have the Investment Canada Act and we've got all these controls, and they'll make sure, trust them, they'll make sure that no foreign government controls our airports. But do you trust them? The government run by Mr. Brookfield himself is going to take a stand for Canadian sovereignty, take a stand against venture capital money controlling our critical infrastructure? I don't trust them. I don't think most Canadians trust them. And if the Liberals are so confident that they have noble intentions here, why do they sneak this stuff into your budget and never talk to you about it? They didn't mention it on the campaign trail. They didn't do a press conference to explain to you what they meant when they said they want to explore privatizing our airports. No, they want to operate in the shadows. And this is why my constituents don't trust the Liberals. This is also why it's fair to say these guys are fake nationalists. You don't walk around talking about building a stronger Canada while also potentially selling off our critical infrastructure. Those two things don't go together. Now, my final observation from speaking with constituents this week is once again hearing from mothers and fathers who cannot find childcare. And what's interesting is that when you look at the Liberal government's budget, you see examples of them saying, they're spending billions of your tax dollars on childcare. In fact, in the 2025 budget, they announced an increase from $7.9 billion to $8.5 billion. You would think that would translate into more childcare available for families in our country. As the nationalists they claim to be, you would think they would take it very seriously, making sure that Canadian families can raise children in strong and healthy environments. And yet, over and over again, I hear from moms and dads of young children who can't find a place to send their kids. And I want you to understand exactly what's going on here. You see, when the federal government takes your tax dollars and says they're going to send it to help childcare facilities, the first step is they transfer it to provincial governments. Where I'm from, that would be Ontario, but this applies everywhere across Canada. The second step then is the provincial governments transfer money to municipalities. In Ontario, there's 47 of them. So before a single child is taken care of, before a single family sees a benefit, you've now had money flow through all three levels of government, with the municipalities in Ontario then being trusted to determine which parts of their area would receive money, how many spots will be allocated, and how that money will be used to either cover the fees for childcare or the overhead capital costs. Three levels of government involved. Now, what does that mean? Well, number one, it means everybody's getting a cut. Everybody's getting a cut. So by the time it flows to the actual people on the ground, that's a lot less money left. But then when it is spent, who's accountable in that situation? You come to Ottawa and you ask the Liberals, what's going on with childcare? They go, oh, we gave the money to the provinces. You go to the province and say, hey, what's going on with childcare? The province says, oh, we gave the money to the municipality. You go to the municipality and say, hey, what's going on with childcare? They go, oh, I don't know. We only get the money from the federal government and the provinces. Nobody's responsible. It's a Spider-Man meme. Everybody's pointing at each other. But at the end of the day, nobody actually has to fix it. So every mother and father out there who wonders, why can't you find childcare? And when you can find it, why isn't it affordable? You know the answer. Because the levels of government around here, they don't actually want to give you childcare. They're not actually committed to delivering a quality service. They're just shuffling money around and hoping you don't blame them for your quality of life getting worse. This is the truth of what's going on in Canadian politics. A lot of phonies, a lot of fake people pretending that they care about this country, that they're taking a stand for this country, but they're not. Thanks for listening. God bless you, and God bless Canada.